Welcome, everyone. Today I have a very special guest once again. As always, this podcast is focused on stories that are awesome in one way or another related to doing medicine and healing work. And today I'm here with a dear friend of mine. His name is
Thank
Max. I'm so happy that you decided to say yes to this. And what makes this story particularly awesome, and Max obviously is going to go more in detail around this, is that when I met him, he pretty much didn't want to be living anymore. It's not that you were necessarily suicidal, but you were just really unhappy with how your life was playing out, right?
Right. That's
And
correct.
you went from that to not wanting to change your life for literally anything. Like you've got the best life available out
I feel
there.
like I won the lottery.
You went from this is the worst possible life to
Yes.
I feel like I won the lottery.
From I don't want this, I don't want to be here, I don't want to keep doing this, to I wouldn't change it for anything. For anything.
And what happened in between those two things was plant medicine.
Yes.
And I was asking you today, how much of that switch in the mentality would you attribute to plant medicine?
95%. The plant medicine taught me to think in new ways, to see life in new ways, to understand the giving and receiving of energy in new ways. And that started creating the different results.
Mm-hmm.
Like it started with one big switch, which was the first ceremony I did, where I was shown that things could change, which I think at that point in my life was the only message that I needed. Hey, look, things could be better. And then once I understood they could, I just kept going. And very, very importantly, which we have talked about many times before, and doing the homework.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I want to pause there for a minute. You mentioned that the most important message was to know that things could get better.
Yes.
Something that, it can sound so simple or might sound even obvious, right? Like if you think about it, of course things can change, but something about that seemed to have been really meaningful to you. Why was this so important to either hear or understand from the inside?
Right. Because I had not been able to do it. I had been obviously trying for years, right? When you think you're trying, or you're actually trying to make things work, to make things change, and it's just one failure after another, one closed door, one closed window after another for years, and things keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So I actually thought there was no way, and the pain of that was such that it led me to say, okay, I need to do something completely different. And before I did my first ceremony, I wasn't spiritual in any way. I wasn't really a big believer in any kind of non-normal Western medicine. But the pain was so bad that I said, I'll try anything. And that's when you recommended.
Showed up in the picture.
You showed up in the picture and said, hey, have you tried this? And I said, no, but I will try it.
Right. You reach the point where at this point it doesn't matter what is it.
Correct.
So
yeah.
Would you be okay sharing how your life looked like back then? I remember it perfectly, but I would love to hear it from you.
I think that the story that we keep going back to over and over is the one where I'm on my way to work, and in the car I'm daydreaming about getting in a car accident just so I don't have to go to work.
Oh my God. That's just a lot.
Which is terrible. And if you think about that for long enough, eventually you will make it happen. And I don't think at that point I wanted to die, but just like a little injured.
enough.
Just injured enough.
Enough so that you can call to work.
That you don't have to go to work for a few days, and that no one can blame you for not doing it.
And the daydreaming is not even like, I hope I find a better job.
No,
it's like, I hope I crash my car.
Yes.
So
I don't have to go
for
to
the
work.
next 5 days.
Yes,
right?
I don't have to go to work. And for example, now I can't wait to go to work. It's easily one of the best part of my days. I look forward to it. I'm excited about it. I can tell little things like, for example, when I come back from vacation, I'm not dreading going to work. I actually can't wait. I'm so excited to see. For those of you that don't know, I'm actually a dog trainer. So I'm very excited to see my clients, the dogs I'm training, watching them learn, engaging with them. That alone, and there are many of these, but that one alone is this huge 180-degree change. Like, to want to go to work, that was unfathomable for me. Like, I didn't understand that concept existed.
It even existed,
that you could want to go to work. No one, I know it sounds silly, but no one had told me that could be the truth. And now it feels like, why would I do anything else? But I had to understand that was a reality. I didn't know that.
And that's, among many, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you here is because it's not that you were born into your passion and from age 12 you were like some golden child that already knew exactly what you want. No, I feel like that can be very relatable of people who don't want to go to work, that dread going to work, that the idea of the vacation is both beautiful and also kind of hard because you know that the vacation one day will end and then you have to go back to that, and that's where you were. And you went from that to not only finding something that you love and that you want to do every day, but something that you didn't even know that when I met you were not a dog trainer.
Nope. I didn't mention it.
Never.
When we started hanging out, I never said, hey, I've always really wanted to be a dog trainer, but I'm too afraid to try. That wasn't even a conversation that we had.
You probably didn't even know that was even like a profession, probably.
No, that you could actually do and make living and pay your bills.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And you didn't just become a dog trainer. You became one of the most coveted dog trainers in Los Angeles. You appeared in national TV training dogs. You have trained the dogs of many celebrities. And you appeared in newspapers. You're totally crushing it. You went from, I hate my life, I want to crash my car, to actually crashing it, but in a positive way.
Yeah.
And you went from zero to all of this. And what I would like you to talk about, because it's what I've seen, is a massive shift in mindset, in belief systems, but not because these things happened first and then
no, yes, exactly.
Right? Like I saw you shift your everything about it, and it was so inspiring and beautiful. And that's another reason why I thought it would be so amazing for you to share the story.
Yes. I know, because we talked about this many times. The two big things that came were, one, radical accountability. This idea that whatever is happening to you is your fault. And of course, the first time I heard that, there's that rejection. What do you mean I want this? Or what do you mean I'm making this happen? But then the second that sinks in, the second part is you go, oh, well, but then that means I can make a change, which is kind of the point.
It kind of gives the power back to you.
Yes, you absolutely can make a change. And that connects to the second thing, which is, as much as we wish it were like this, first you have to make the change and then the results come, right? Because I remember when I started training dogs and no one knew me, nobody knew who I was, no one was calling me, there were no emails, but I first took on the work ethic of somebody who was going to be one of the best dog trainers in Los Angeles. And then the results came and matched the outer world matched the inner world. And that has repeated over and over and over and over and over and over again. That was one of the biggest lessons. And you first have to work really hard in private. There's a really important saying, so that then you can celebrate all the wins in public. It's always like that. And I remember, like, I would maybe see one person a week, maybe. And then I would have to turn on the Uber app because I couldn't make ends meet. And so I would drive Lyft share to try to pay bills. But I didn't care. I would still see that one client already with the intensity, with the passion, doing research for them, finding things out for them, understanding the breed, but whatever I had to do it like I already was one of the best dog trainers in LA. And now I feel like reality is matching that.
That's amazing, because when I met you, I wouldn't have ever thought that that would be a thought or a way of thinking or a way of being that would come before you would see those results. So if I would be in the audience right now, I think I would be curious about, you went from pretty much hating your life to loving your life. And there was a mindset change in the middle that happened with all of the things that you're talking about. And you attribute 95% of that mindset change to plant medicine. Yeah. So you had this little cup in your hand. You drank it.
Yes.
What happened in order for your mindset to change this much? What do you feel was given to you by this plant, either in your first journey or in your first several journeys? Or
so the change in perspective was given to me in very small bite-size amounts, or building bricks. And so I would be given this new perspective, and then I would go apply it in real life. And as I applied it, I would see small changes in a very pragmatic, tangible way. And so then, because that happened, I would go back and ask for more homework, basically. So I'll give you an easy example. In the first ceremony I ever did, the big thing that came was that I could love myself.
Good one.
Right? Solid start.
Yeah, that's starting. Yeah,
that's a great start. And I clearly had not felt that about me for a very long time.
Did you even know what self-love even was?
Maybe in some subconscious way, but not in an everyday practiced kind of thing. And so, right, I have the first journey. I have this whole experience. The basic part is, hey, did you know that you could love yourself? And of course that sounds great, but what does that look like in pragmatic, tangible, daily? And so the first thing that came was, listen to the kind of jokes you make about yourself. Listen to the little phrases that you use every day to describe you. And especially the ones that you repeat often. And I'll give you an example. I remember I was working somewhere. I don't even remember the client or the dog, but I remember the example. And he pays me, and I made some joke like, thank you very much. I'm going to get out here quickly before you change your mind. And it's a funny joke. But after you say it 3 or 4 times, listening to what you're saying about yourself, that you don't deserve it, that they're going to realize that you're a fake, that you realize that the effort you've put in is actually not valuable. That's why you want to run away. And I started realizing that I was making these comments all over the place. The way I talked about myself, the way I referred to myself, and I started changing them.
Wow.
And so it gave me a very clear formula, right? Next time you want to make that joke, the next time that joke comes into your head, you will instead say, thank you very much. I love helping you with this.
Oh, what a difference. I mean, it sounds already
right?
So different.
But I didn't notice that I was doing it.
Correct.
I didn't know I was doing it. I didn't know I was seeing myself in that way.
So you drank the medicine and things started happening
right.
that made you realize by yourself that,
yes.
For example, among the many things that you might have realized, that the ways in which you talk to yourself in these small ways, or even the ways in which you make a joke, because I think that there's so many people who are constantly cracking jokes about others, about themselves, and it all sounds like a joke, but based on what you're saying, it seems like a lot of those jokes are coming from real insecurities and real ways of where self-love is not present.
Yes.
And then you started just kind of realizing all of that and getting homework.
Yes.
So you mentioned that. Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah. To go back into your everyday life.
Yeah.
And start making those changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You will now speak differently about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always very nice because in the ceremonies, she's never like, you can't do this. Of course, you can make jokes, but once you make it 3 or 4 times, make a note of it.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you making that joke? What is it saying? What are you telling other people about you? And then, of course, it started growing from there. Your actions, what are they telling people about you? The way you're apologizing for things, what are they saying? Because they all come from a deep-seated belief of what you think you are. And that includes what you think you deserve, what you think you should get. And I clearly had a big thing where the lack of self-love manifested in, I don't think I should have any kind of abundance in my life.
Or that you deserve it.
Or yeah, exactly.
Or that it will ever happen to you. Correct. Like the stars are not aligned for...
Right. That's not for me.
That's not for me, yeah.
That's not in my... Which is what makes you start thinking, well, if life is a gift, I'd like to return it.
That's a good joke. That if you say enough times, we'll probably say a lot about how you're experiencing it. Yeah.
Yeah. But back then, I had that thought over and over and over and over again. I remember that particular joke I would make, even to myself. And I had to say, oh, I'm thinking about it again. Just don't say it.
What was so hard about life that made you want to crash your car?
Clearly, all the decisions I was making were bad decisions, right? I couldn't get a job that I liked. I couldn't seem to find a way of using my time, my energy, my intelligence, my life in a way that made me feel significant or happy or fulfilled in any way, shape, or form. And that's where, if it's okay to share,
sure,
that's where you came and you said, hey, why don't you sleep on my couch for some time?
Yeah, I remember. You were... Do you want to share your living situation back then?
Yeah, of course. I ended up living in a quasi halfway house, which is the best way to explain it, where I would be living in a 2-bedroom with like 7 other guys because I couldn't afford anything else. And I just couldn't seem to get out of that. I couldn't seem to get out of...
I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate.
Right.
Like, I just can't get out of this situation. Yes. It's not for me. It's not possible. It's not going to happen.
Right. And I thought that's the thing. I didn't think that for some time. I had that experience for years, which is when the suicidal thoughts start coming in because you can't change it.
Yeah. And if it repeats for several years, it reinforces enough where at some point you believe it. And then at some point it's beyond the belief system. It's
right.
It's how things are. That's the reality. Yes. Of course, it can change. We know that, but in that moment, there's no other potential reality.
Right.
It's not even, oh, I believe this about myself, but maybe like...
No, this is a fact.
This is a fact.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like now it's a fact that I believe I won the lottery.
Right.
Right.
What a beautiful change.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember you were living with a lot of people and we were starting to become friends.
Yeah.
And I remember my heart would break because I'd be like, I can tell Max is like such an awesome guy. And we were starting to develop our friendship.
Yes.
And yeah, he would just tell me like going back home and...
I don't want to go back home.
Yeah.
I would find excuses to sleep on your couch.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to go back home. And I'm like, oh, I'm really tired.
Yeah. I was always really happy to have you there.
Yeah.
So you came home.
Yes.
You escaped that 7 people
right
situation.
Yeah. And it's funny because you remember, because you were there, you remember me sending curriculums, applying for jobs.
It's not that you were lazy.
No.
You were trying.
No. And it's so funny because now I can absolutely see how the version of me that I was back then, I wouldn't hire either. Even with I speak a few languages, I had a master's degree. Even with all that stuff, I would have not hired myself. So yeah, you were there to see that. And you're like, what do you mean? I was like, I can't get it. I didn't get hired to like clean bathrooms at that point. I got rejected.
Did you actually apply for
Yeah.
that? Oh my God. I didn't remember that one. And
They were like, no, thank you.
and I remembered moments in which you would come out of a ceremony and you would come out shocked about the potential for thinking differently.
Yes.
Not even for having a different life, but like, oh, can I actually see the world in this way?
Yes.
And see you get maybe a combination of lightly hopeful and somewhat excited for other realities to be possible.
Yeah.
And for me, it was so beautiful to see that transformation and see the process. Because honestly, I feel that this is something that you have shown me too, that is possible to have people go from one extreme into another, and to witness that whole process was very good also for my practice, because it allows me, when I talk to people, to let them know that real change and real healing are possible.
Yeah.
Not just because of you. Obviously, I've
helped a few people.
I've helped a few people, and so for me, that thing is obvious at this point. But you, my friend, were one of the first people who accepted a cup of medicine from me.
Yeah.
When I had pretty much no clue what I was doing.
No.
I've seen you shift your mindset, not only about what's possible when it comes to loving your own life, but also your self-confidence changed a lot.
Right.
And your idea of what do you deserve romantically changed a lot too. Maybe I'd like to give you the space to, if you want to share, talk a little bit about that.
In the ceremony, I had one which was really about reconstructing my self-esteem. When I came out of that, it was one of those where you're given this kind of mended, let's call it tree, that had, for a lot of traumatic reasons, just never grown. But the problem is that if that's not there, you don't actually believe that you deserve anything good. So much so that I called my nanny from when I was in primary school, and I asked her about those days. And one of the things she said was, I used to come home crying because I was bullied mercilessly. And I would say things like, no, but I think that I deserve it because I'm not a good person. And she told me it would break her heart. And
it breaks mine just hearing that.
Imagine it, like a 9-year-old saying that about themselves. And so that just never grew with me. And so as things got better and better, eventually that had to be, okay, you love yourself, that's nice, good. Now you can start slowly loving other people. Okay, that's good. Okay, how do we expand that self-love? And one of them is believing that you are of worth, that you are worth something, and that you can be of service in a way that is wonderful and fulfilling. And so I had the ceremony where I basically, self-esteem was seen as this tree, and I made it grow. And I left there with this idea of, oh, okay, that's grown now. And so, okay, that's wonderful, but what does that look like again in real life? And one of the things, if I can share this, one of the things I love about my ceremonies is that I end up with very tangible, practical ways of applying these lessons when I go out into the world. Because the more of the ceremonies that I've done, the more I've realized really the idea is to be great, or to feel great every day when you wake up. And great doesn't mean you're just happy all the time.
Correct.
Right? I don't mean that at all.
Yeah.
But I do mean that even when you're going through harder times, you're still really in love with your life. And now I say things like, thank God these are my problems. And those kind of moments are phenomenal.
And it's possible that it's not because the problems necessarily changed as much as the mindset.
Absolutely.
I know that your problems today are different than your problems when I met you, but you could still have the problems you have today, but with the mindset of the past, you would still think that your life sucks.
Yes.
Right. So it's a combination of both. Like once you change the mindset, you probably will have problems that match that mindset that are more positive, but it starts there.
Yeah.
And I have a question. Because lack of self-love is something that I would say everybody suffers from. In some people in big amounts, some people like don't love themselves at all. Some people partially love themselves, but maybe it's not that much. Some people partially love themselves a decent amount, but there's still places where they lack it. And I actually just released a few weeks ago a video on self-love, which I will be linking in the description below. So that the reason why I'm saying that is because self-love to me is most likely the most important part of ourselves to develop if we want to see the changes we want to see in ourselves, which then translate as the changes we want to see in the world. And that most of the problems that we suffer from violence or sexual abuse and bullying, and as well as more global things like wars and global problems that are seemingly beyond the scope of any individual, I think is coming at the end of the day from the collective lack of self-love. So I'm saying all of this because I give it a lot of importance, and it is one of the main things that I want to heal both within myself and I want others to heal, because I believe that's going to bring the world that we ultimately want to be living in. So with all of that being said, you said that you were being taught to love yourself more.
Yes.
How does that look like? If I don't know what this medicine is, or even if I have drank this medicine in the past, but I still don't manage to love myself, how can I love myself if I don't love myself? How did you love yourself if you didn't love yourself?
You start, and in many ways, I think these are decisions that we, or at least I, but I've talked to other people about this, know are the right thing to do, and we still don't do them. So for example, keeping the promises that you make to yourself, that is a huge one. How many times have you heard the phrase, or some version of the phrase, "Oh, I know I shouldn't do this."
Yeah.
"Oh, I know it's not really the best for me." Like, and there's so many examples. There's small ones that I really like. Like, if you say to yourself, "I'm going to wake up at a certain time to work out," and you don't do it, and you know what's best for you, I now ask myself, okay, if you do it once or twice, fine. But if you continually keep not doing what you know is what's best for you, to me, that's where I saw the lack of self-love. And we go back to this idea of first you have to do the work and then you get the nice cozy feeling. This is a great example. First you have to get up early, in this case, which is something you don't want, and go do the thing, and then you feel the nice cozy feeling. As you get better at this, you start doing it in more places. Oh, that person that I shouldn't be talking to, but I still text them back. I block the number. I feel like this is also a very common one. Oh, I know. Why is he calling me again? Why is she calling me again? And then you pick up. Why? Why are you allowing this in your life? So you actually block the number. And what's fascinating is that when I was connected to versions of lack of self-love, I would give, in this case, that person space in my life. Why? Now, it sounds so simple, but I feel like there's so many versions of this. And so actually block the number. Actually wake up to do it. And as you start in the beginning, it's really hard. But as you start doing more and more of it, you start getting that snowball effect. And you start feeling really good about yourself. Because I said I was going to do this. I told myself I was going to do this. And then I did it. And those were the little actionable things that started making me feel this. And now I feel like doing that stuff is a lot easier.
Right.
A lot easier.
You already established that the reward's coming. And it doesn't feel as You already established that in your mind. That's how probably
this is how I treat myself.
How you treat yourself.
Yes.
It's in a way a new identity that replaced
the old identity.
The old identity.
Right.
That was the way I treat myself is in all of the negative ways that you were already describing.
I treat myself like someone that when they pay him, she should run away just in case they change their mind really fast.
It sounds a little bit of a catch-22 in a way, because sometimes if you're lacking self-love, then that's going to contribute to not waking up early to work out, right? Like
that's
what broke the cycle?
Yeah, that's where the ceremonies come in. That's it. Because the difference is, I feel like, now again, this is a personal one, but I feel like with therapy, I could get to the point where I could see where the problem came from, and I could see the effect it was having in me, but I could not change the behavior.
Which is a problem that a lot of people have.
Yes.
Which is why I'm asking you this, because I saw you breaking through that.
Yeah. And I just could not change the behavior. And I would go to ceremony, and it would give me that impulse, that wind in the sails to do times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you see if you've healed enough where you can do 11 to 50 on your own. But that, to me, that was the big part about the ceremonies, was the idea of the medicine would allow me to change the behavior with help the first few times. Okay, and I was like taking training wheels off of a bike.
Yeah.
And then you start slowly doing it on your own, and then more and more and more and more. And then suddenly you get to the point where you're doing it on your own without even thinking about it. And that's usually when I would be ready to go back to do the next ceremony. But so people know, I'm talking like 6 months in between.
Yeah.
Of like practicing one thing.
Yeah, I've seen sometimes moments where I would be like, hey, there's another ceremony coming. And you're like, wait, I still haven't done all my homework. You are so diligent at that. And maybe, I mean, in this channel, we talk a lot about how to do healing work. And I am not sure that until now I talked necessarily too much about homework. I talked about integration and how the homework is important. But the way you are talking about it and the way you're bringing it up, I think is worth really putting an accent into it. Like you were okay. And also, this is why I wanted to have you in the channel, because your ceremonies were very pragmatic and very much like, I'm going to school to learn these things.
Yes.
And this is my homework. And okay. And then you would tell me like, yeah, I have these 6 pieces of homework.
Right.
See you in the next ceremony once I'm done with all of them.
Yeah.
And I would see you sometimes go through 6 months, sometimes longer.
There
would be a year in between. And you were like, it's not that I don't want to go, but what's the point of drinking more and getting more homework if I'm not done with?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what I loved about your ceremonies and your process. I feel like your diligence with the homework, I wouldn't say it's the whole thing, but I think it made a big difference.
It's a big part of it. Yeah. And it's a good thing to share is that doing the homework is terrifying. And usually...
Tell me more.
Yeah, usually you're in the right place because it's terrifying. The thing is, no one escapes the discomfort of growth. It doesn't exist. And so hopefully, because you got help, because you went to a ceremony, because you were getting medicine, you're being pointed in the right direction, right? But 100% of the time, doing the homework at the beginning was terrifying. And I'll give you an example.
Sure.
I remember when I came out and I said, I will never give my time for free again unless I decide so, which means I'm not giving discounts. Right? I'm not giving packages. If you buy 4, you get the 5th one for free. Right? And I was so afraid that the clients would start rejecting me. Terrified.
I can imagine.
What if all this goes away? What if I have to go back to driving for Uber? Like, what if I have to go back to... I used to work in the marijuana fields in Humboldt County to try to make money to be able to make this work. And so what if it all goes away? And so the first times when I get the call and somebody goes, oh, can you do like a 4 for 5? You feel it. You feel this horrible feeling in your body. and your brain is screaming at you.
Don't.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you have to understand that all that fear and the voices in your head are part of an old programming, which is creating the life that you live in. And then the first time you go, no, I don't do that anymore.
Oh my God. I just love how you're saying it.
And what happens is people go, oh, okay, well, I just wanted to ask, but let's do it anyway.
Positive reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
But it's terrifying. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. Terrifying to do that in love. It's terrifying to be attracted to somebody a lot and know that the thing that makes you attracted to that person is old programming. And that it's
because it's important to note that you are not just talking about your job or money. Like
no,
that was something that started applying everywhere.
To everything. I just remember that. It's funny, the examples that come in. I remember that example though, just being terrified. In the same way that in love, in finding a partner, I remember getting to the point where I was like, oh, I can't trust what I'm attracted to, which is why I have a little bit of a problem with the phrase like, follow your instincts. Well, what if your instincts are crap?
Also, a lot of times instincts are confused with what comes naturally out of you when you're in fear that prevent you from actually listening to your actual instincts. And so
that's a great way of saying it.
Well, I hear it, yes. And I see it in ceremony a lot of times when, for example, I'm on the phone call with someone and says like, I really want to come. My friend or my wife or my husband told me that this would be great for me. I'm like, okay, what's preventing you from going? It's like, well, I have a feeling that things are going to go bad. This is my instinct is telling me that it's not going to be good for me. And I usually say that's actually your fear talking.
Right.
Because I would say 80% of the times after we talk for a while and then they end up coming, it ends up going well. Like, I don't even remember a single case where that instinct was right. Right. So, and I also see it in myself where something is like, oh, my gut feeling is like, no, that's just your own fear right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important practice to be able to not necessarily distrust your feelings or your instincts, but to at least question, is this coming from fear or from another place that could be confused as an instinct?
Yeah, especially because you're often attracted to what you know, but what you know might be really unhealthy.
Or coming from a wound.
Yeah. And so
tell me about love, because I also saw you
find the most incredible. I call her my queen unicorn partner, Pegasus, and I call her that in public, like people's faces.
You're definitely doing that right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw you have really unhealthy relationships, and see you shift from that to the incredible
my Queen Pegasus
unicorn partner that you are dating today.
Right. So that was another great example of, okay, clearly what I'm attracted to is not healthy. So great.
And we're talking about attracted naturally. Like, oh, that's the person I want to be. And then you started realizing, oh, all the people that I'm
attracted to are extremely conflictive, really like fighting, tend to be vengeful. Almost to the point where if I went into a room and I was attracted to somebody, I could tell you what their traumas were. Like immediately.
Yeah.
So, and again, this is where, to me, the big difference in ceremonies comes in. I'm like, okay, I know where that comes from and I understand why it's happening, but why can't I stop being attracted to them? And that's where the ceremony comes in. And so I would come to ceremony with that. And the way I would prepare is I would journal about it. I would talk to people about it. I would talk to people about how they do relationships, what they look for, what they're attracted to. And so then I would go to the ceremony and I'd have some incredible dreamlike version of a metaphor that would either clean the slate or mend the wound or change the belief. And then I would come out. But then, for example, the homework would be, okay, for a while, whatever you're attracted to, you will say no.
Wow, that's also hard homework
which
to
is
do.
terrifying, because what if then because your immediate belief is, well, what if I never find anyone ever?
Yeah.
Because all I know is how to be attracted to this.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're attracted to them, you will say no for months until it becomes really, really easy. And then you can come back. And so that was about 6 months of every time I felt attracted to a woman, I'd be like, thank you, but no, thank you. And I would walk away.
Wow. I don't know if I could have done that.
And
Honestly.
right, but
maybe.
I believe so.
Maybe. I don't know.
But again, it's terrifying
really
because there's a moment where you think you're going to die alone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I really celebrate the courage, bravery.
Sure. Yeah. That's why I said before that it starts with bite-sized bits. Because by the time you get to these big ones, you've already done it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. And you now believe in the process, even though it's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people ask me about this, I tell them all the time, especially in the beginning, each time you look at change in the face, it was terrifying for me, super terrifying. And I had that belief of, I'm going to die alone.
Mm.
And then I didn't. Well, so far, I don't know.
You haven't died yet. But
yeah.
You seem to be on the right track to not die alone.
And so suddenly I met Rachel, and it's incredible because, like all of the previous relationships had all this fighting in it, she is somebody that naturally creates peace and quiet and nurture everywhere around her. I didn't know these people existed.
When I'm in her presence, I'm immediately, the first thing that shows up for me is like, why was I talking so fast? Why was I so nervous? Why do I have all these tensions? Like, it's like, oh, things are okay.
Right. And what ends up happening is I realize now that in my friendships, in my job, I'm attracting people that are like that. Which is what makes you want to hang out with your friends and want to go to work. And maybe the most important one, want to come home. Whereas before I didn't want to. I went to sleep on your couch.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. What I love about this is that I think we talked enough about how much you thought or you felt or it actually was true that your life sucked, at least the experience of your life really sucked, and that how strong that belief was installed and how actually that can change. Because to me, one of the reasons why I started this channel and this podcast is really to inspire people to start their healing journey. And I've been bringing different guests and teaching different things, always from a different angle. And I really wanted to bring someone who does not necessarily identify as somebody like super spiritual or super like into energies. Like you're a very pragmatic guy. And like, what's your relationship now then with spirituality? I would like someone like you, the way I described it, to describe their relationship to spirituality. What's spirituality to you, or your relationship to it, whatever you want to say about it.
So I think it comes back to this idea of perspective, right? Because it's really interesting. I believe in energies and a lot of things that could be considered spiritual, but it's interesting how I see them, and I guess I believe in them because I see them represented everywhere around us. And it's just a great explanation for things that I now see happen over and over and over and over again, right? Like an easy one would be the law of attraction, which is a pretty spiritual, I think, kind of idea. Well, if you want to call it that, that's great. But what I see constantly is that if I behave in a certain way, I end up vibing with people that behave in a certain way. And I end up attracting them, even if in the beginning, if it's first scary or hard. And so that's a very easy way to see something like energy. Where I see it. Do you see it? Of course I see it. Where do you see it? Well, I see that if I vibe in a certain way, and that's a perfect word to say this, I end up attracting people and things that match that. And incredibly, I can see how we all end up looking for things that make us comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the way you're comfortable with yourself, which has to have quite a high degree of self-love, then you end up finding people that vibe in the same way. And they usually have quite a high degree of self-love.
Mm-hmm.
So I see it that's a great example of how I see it. And maybe it's just my personality, but I tend to not stay very much in very intangible ideas. Like I love discussing them and I love exploring them.
Mm-hmm. Which we have done plenty of times. We talked about God many times. We talked about demons many times.
Yes.
We talked about all of the esoteric or spiritual
Exactly.
things. And I've never seen you, at least maybe that would be the next question, which is what was your relationship to spirituality before doing all of this? But at least for a very long time, I have not seen you resist talking about these things anymore.
Such a great question. I hated it.
Yeah.
Hated it.
Yeah.
Which is why going to my first ceremony was the absolute proof that I was dedicated to change.
Mm-hmm.
Because it went against everything that I thought was real and useful. And I know where it comes from too. I grew up in a very oppressive kind of Catholic culture, and that's the only access to spirituality that I knew.
Mm-hmm. This is very common, by the way.
Mm-hmm. And so why would I want that in my life? The thing is, eventually things got so bad that I was like, well, if this is, I don't know what I have to try, but it has to be something radically different. Almost to the point where I would say, okay, this is what Max would normally do in this kind of very third person kind of way as an exercise. What would be an anti-Max move?
Uh-huh. Because the Max thing wasn't working.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Whatever Max did at that point, poor guy, man, I really love him. I do.
Me too.
But nothing that he's doing is working.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, so let's accept that, which we go back to this idea of radical accountability. Clearly, everything you're doing is not working, which is a hard thing to say to yourself.
Definitely.
And so
seems like it's a very easy thing to
dismiss.
To dismiss or deny.
It's so easy to blame everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't hire me because of this. This relationship didn't work because of her.
Right. Oh my God. Oh, I wish everyone would be hearing this.
It's never me.
Yeah, right?
I mean, I have some growth to do, but I'm really good. And I was like, clearly, your reality is not matching that thought at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why I love sharing this, because again, it's very pragmatic, right? If you're in this position, what I did is I went okay, what is the anti-Max move? To do a medicine ceremony. Like that was so radical. And I was like, great, let's do that. Because I don't know if it's going to fix it, but I know the results will be different.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I would never do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, it worked. I'm just very glad you said medicine instead of meth.
Instead of?
Meth.
Medicine.
Medicine. Hey, you want to try some?
Yeah, you might have said yes. So
I might have said yes.
Yeah.
At that point, I might have said yes
to anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I like about the way sharing my story and the way things end up working for me is it's these very useful, like tomorrow, anybody can wake up and go, okay, this sucks for me. What would be an anti-me move?
Mm-hmm.
Try that.
I love that you're giving so many examples of how to just make things different for people who might be feeling stuck. Or
that's such a horrible feeling too, especially if you've been stuck for years.
Mm-hmm. And I also like that you're saying that too, because it admits and names and acknowledges the hardship of change.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people are like, oh, just change this. And if the hardship of it is not acknowledged, then you don't have the opportunity to tell yourself, what I'm about to do is hard, which I think really brings the right kind of energy or mindset into doing it, instead of just failing and not understanding why.
And that's why I love to acknowledge that when you start changing, at least when I did, every time I saw it, I looked at it, it was terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like a part of you is going to die, and it technically has to,
mm-hmm.
for this new little part to grow.
Yeah.
Usually, if it's not terrifying, you're not actually pushing against a boundary, and probably you're cheating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the beginning, it's probably absolutely terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a great way to know, oh, I'm pushing in the right place.
I love all the like tips and like
right. Actually, can I share one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
How I ended up finding the dogs.
It's interesting because that's actually was going to be my next question, which is how did you?
No.
It must be the energy.
It must be the energy.
How did you become a dog trainer?
Yes.
How did that happen?
So I had something like 20 jobs before I started. Before I found dog training, and some were jobs like in tech companies that look really good on paper, and I hated being there. So in a moment of desperation, which sometimes lead to some really good results, I said, okay, if going to work sucks, I don't feel that way anymore, but I definitely did back then. If going to work sucks, it might as well suck with. And the first thing that came to my head was puppies.
It's so cool. That's how it came.
That's how it came.
Wow.
And so I did. I also did something really, really different, which was until then, I had only been told that the way you did things is you went to school and then you got a job.
Mm-hmm.
I had already done that twice. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be paying those for a while. And it clearly didn't work. Mm-hmm. And so instead of going to a school for dog trainers, I said, okay, that's clearly not worked for me. What is the opposite of that? And the answer that came was, why not go be an apprentice? Which to me, I know it sounds simple, but to me it was a huge breakthrough. Because I didn't know you could do things in another way.
Right. It's breaking with
the parameters. Yeah. And so I searched because there are a lot of dog trainers, but I searched like the master trainers in LA, and there were 4 or 5 at the time. And one of them took me as an apprentice. And I started as a kennel assistant, cleaning kennels and picking up a lot of dog poop at like 5:30 in the morning. And I just started there as an apprentice. And then after 2.5 years, I started going out. I went out on my own. But that's how that came to be.
Do you think like that way of thinking would have come up without having done the ceremonies before?
No. No. Because I didn't know you could think in a different way.
Right. So this is why sometimes when people come to ceremony with the intention of, sometimes let's say is, I want to find my path, or
right.
That's one example. The other example, it seems that it's not related, would be I want to make more money. Like sometimes people come with that simple intention. It's not necessarily seemingly spiritual. It's not about finding your path or about finding God or about finding truth. It's like,
it's a very valid one.
I am struggling economically and I want to know how to make more money. And usually people don't get the answers in their journeys like, oh, you are now gonna be a plumber and that's your new thing, and that's how you're gonna make more money. Or you should invest in this stock because in 25 days it's gonna shoot up. And people sometimes are like, is that the right intention to bring to a ceremony? And my answer is always yes, because you might not get a direct answer, but you might get something that changes the way in which you see the world, experience yourself, maybe makes you happy to be alive in the ways that you are mentioning. And then from that place outside of ceremony, things that wouldn't have come up any other way start coming up in the same way in which you're talking about now, about the dogs.
Yeah, because if you go from thinking, when I went from thinking, I want to make more money, I have to make more money because I'm suffering immensely, to where can I put myself where I can be of service? And then the more I did that, the more money I made. But it was never money has never come to me from, I want to make more money. It always came from, okay, this is something I'm good at. How can I help people more? And the more I invested in myself to be better, the more I got compensated. Also, the more I believed that I deserved that compensation. The more, because you can be incredible at your job, and if you don't believe that you are valuable and that you deserve that level of compensation, no one's going to just give it to you.
Right.
There's a part here where, as aggressive as this may sound in a ceremony that's usually a lot full of love, is there's a bit of aggression that is needed to defend what is yours and to defend what you deserve. And I'm not saying aggression like you go fight for it, but there's an intention with which you say, hey, this is what I'm worth. And if you truly believe it,
people will believe it too.
People will believe it too. And so you have to say it first, but it can't be a lie.
Correct.
Like, you have to know that you are. And if you're not there, again, start with the bite-sized bits. And then you rock those for a while and you're like, actually, I'm pretty good at this. I remember when I heard the phrase, by the way, if your schedule is full all the time, you should charge more. I was like, really? But that came from, how do I think about this in a different way? Right? And the different way was, in your case, how can I be of service? And there's a few ways to get there. Like, one of them that I like a lot is, what were you like very passionate about as a kid? And when my dad told one of his friends, oh, this is what Max is doing, the friend said, oh, of course he is, because didn't he used to go out with the dog walkers when he was a kid? And so, like, it all made sense. And so clearly, if you go back to my young childhood, this love for dog training is there. And also because, I think you know this, but I love sharing it, because I had to wear an orthopedic body brace from ages 12 to 17. And the invaluable companionship I got from my mom's golden retriever and my dad's German shepherd was incredible, because they weren't mean, they weren't teasing you, they weren't making fun of you, they were just there, and in a way that even parents can't be. And it's not that hard to see that now my job is helping people get that level of companionship.
So you think much more, not as like, my job is to train dogs. Correct. As much as my job is to bring companionship into people.
That's absolutely my job.
And when I see you think that way, I really notice how that is translated into what you do, but especially into how your clients perceive you.
Yes.
They are not perceiving you as like either a money-making person or as just a cold dog
It's not
trainer.
Transactional.
Right. It's like, I am here to provide you with the companion you really want for yourself.
And I truly believe that this companionship will make your life 1,000,000 times better. And I want that for every person that I end up working with.
And I see you invested in that.
Yeah.
Like, you really celebrate it when people like are super happy with, like, you come and like, look at they are so happy together.
Yes.
And if it would be just a thing that you get paid, that you wouldn't
never do that.
But then you wouldn't be as successful as you are today, because I started saying all of the all of the things that you have achieved in a fairly short period of time. I would say. How long have you been doing this?
9 years.
And a lot of these things you've achieved several years ago.
Yeah. Yes. Right.
And I think like that speaks volumes of, because you learned the art of training dogs from your mentor, but what you learned somewhere else, maybe from your journeys or in all of the ways in which we were talking about, you learned the way in which you treat people. You learned to really care for making their life better and having the proper companion. You learn to value yourself. You learn to love yourself, and all of these other things that you didn't necessarily learn from, directly from somebody who was teaching you how to train dogs.
Actually, that's the first fight I had with my first mentor.
Which was?
The definition of what my job is.
And what was he saying? And what was
to train the dog.
I
was like, I disagree. I think it's to train the owner and the dog to live really well together. He's like, but it's dog training. And I'm like, actually, I think it's dog trainer. And
oh, that's awesome.
Like when I talk to people on the phone, I always tell them I train 50% the dog, 50% the owner. Yeah. And I say that to be nice, but
it's mostly the owner.
Yeah.
But I think that's what made you who you are today. It wasn't just being really good at training dogs, but also becoming this more wholesome, not trainer, but person that applies that into training.
I think that because it's the person that happens to be the dog trainer.
Right.
It's like a group within a group. I don't think I could be still a very sad person, very unhappy, but successful dog trainer. Like I don't think for me it doesn't work.
Right.
For me it doesn't work. The thing that I'd love to share about this is that I remember one of the things that helped a lot was understanding this idea of find something that you do pretty effortlessly. And if you can find a way to put it into whatever it is that you want to do to help, that's incredibly helpful. And so, for example, in my case, I learned the discipline from like really early because my dad was great at teaching that. And so I think really good at grabbing a really cute face like a puppy and saying, no, it's time to go to nap right now. And clearly that's something that doesn't come that easy to other people.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so
which is how dogs end up being really untrained.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're also cute. And so
we let them get away with whatever they want. And then they're like, why is my dog misbehaving? And I'm like, does it go to take naps a few times a day? No, it's so cute. And I'm like, okay, let me come help you. But if I could share something of that as a general thing that could help is that idea of what is it that you do pretty effortlessly that is really hard for other people. And you end up coming up with really interesting ideas of how you could change things or find new avenues.
I'm sure a lot of people are going to find this really useful. It's like you're not telling them what they have to do, but the right questions to ask so that the right answers also come up.
Yeah, or different answers.
Or different, yeah.
And it might not be exactly what you want, but you know you want different.
Sure.
And that's a great place to start.
That's beautiful. All right. So as somebody with this kind of lifestyle and mindset, did you just show up to ceremony or were you preparing for it?
So in the beginning, yes.
You just showed up.
I just showed up.
I think that's important to name.
Yes.
Some people think that they just need to prepare, do a year of meditation and you just showed up.
Yeah.
And that was my case too, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. In my very first ceremony, that day there was a soccer match that
I really wanted to go to.
Which I really wanted to go to and play. And then the end of the soccer match was like 2 hours before the ceremony. And I was going to probably be hungry. And I was like, oh, I'm going to end up super sweaty and tired and hungry. And probably I'll eat at least a banana or something.
Right.
And they told me I shouldn't eat. I didn't even know. I didn't know anything.
That, right?
But I was like, but I really want to go. That's how I prepared. I ended up not going. I was like, nah, just give this a little bit more seriousness.
Right. But the idea of just showing up.
Of that showing up.
Is don't, because you can keep talking yourself out of it forever.
Sure. Yeah. That's a really good comment.
I remember once talking to somebody about this and they were telling me about how they really wanted to quit their job. And eventually they did, but the way they talked themselves out of it was incredible. And they're like, oh, I hate this job. I want to quit. Oh, but next Friday they're taking us to the Cheesecake Factory. Oh, I can't quit. And then, of course, then it's February and it's already Valentine's Day. Okay, I'll do it in March. And then it's March and you're like, oh, it's almost the end of the year. I might as well quit. And you just keep doing it. So in the beginning, no, I just went.
Yeah. Which is both a encouragement to just show up if that's all you've got. But also what you're about to say is also an encouragement to prepare if you can.
Yes.
So I'm kind of supporting both.
So in the beginning, I just went. I also didn't even know what was going to happen. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I just knew people called it healing and people called it medicine, and it was different. As I started understanding working with the medicine or letting it work with me, really, I would do very deep preparations for things that I wanted to work specifically. I think in the beginning, it's really good to let her take the reins. And because at least when I showed up, it was such a mess that I couldn't have told you where to start.
Yeah. What do you mean with what's my intention?
Yeah, exactly.
Everything is my intention.
Everything's my
intention.
Change everything. I don't want any of this.
Yeah.
And it could be something like you show up and you say, "Oh, I want to find love," and then you go in, you drop in, and you're like, "Love? You're not ready for that." What are you talking about? You're gonna fall in love.
I like that ayahuasca talks to you like that.
Yes. You don't even like yourself. Let's start with going back and forgiving this one thing that you did when you were 12. And you're not going to want to do it because you say it's stupid, but you say it's stupid because you don't want to do it because it's painful. So let's start with that. That was one of my first ceremonies. No, my first ceremony, one of my first things was, let's go back to this one thing you did when you were 12 and just forgive yourself for it. Mm-hmm. And that took an hour and a half. Of like, this is stupid. Why am I here? Just say, I'm sorry. Why?
So resistant.
If you can't just apologize for this one stupid thing, how are you going to fall in love with somebody else? Just, I don't know, fix it. Okay. Just say, I'm sorry. Why? This is so dumb. Right? The resistance was so strong. Mm-hmm. But as I gently started unraveling things, then I usually prepare for at least a month before every time I go, and I will go to great lengths to find the things that stir the ground I'm about to try to harvest or plant in.
What does it mean to prepare in a pragmatic way?
Yeah, in a pragmatic way.
You're
so
Mr. Pragmatic.
I remember when I think.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. You earned it.
Yeah, so, for example, remember when I said I called my nanny from when I was 9 and said, hey, what was my life like back then? Finding, for this particular one, finding home videos from when I was 9, 10, 11, 12, and really watching them and asking my parents about them and asking them now questions that are very specific, like what was your relationship with your father and why did that happen and where did that come from? Journaling about it, talking about it helps me a lot. Listening to music helps me a lot. And so you're very specifically unearthing or trying your best to unearth memories. And then when it's really all come to the surface, as much as you can do it on your own, because obviously eventually you get to a level of pain that you can't do it on your own, which is kind of the point of doing ceremonies, then you go in. And almost every single time, if you're ready, then you're like, okay, this is a good one for this time. Let's go work on this. You're not ready because you can do all that and show up and you go back to, yes, you still haven't apologized for the thing that you've done when you were 12. So we're not doing any of that. But in the end, a lot of times, you're just hoping maybe this time she'll just, but if she doesn't, because
How many ceremonies have you done?
It has to be more than 20.
In how many years?
10. 9, 10.
So about 2 a year or so.
But it was definitely more in the beginning. And I feel like now it's less.
I'm asking you because sometimes people ask me, what's the right
amount?
What's the right amount? And obviously, I have my answer as a facilitator, but I prefer my guests to answer that question because...
So mine was 2 a year?
Yeah, but also because I feel like people will relate more to a participant than to a facilitator. So it is an average of 2 a year, but there were years where you did twice as much, and then there were years where you didn't do any.
Yeah. And if I think of the timeline, all the big changes came after year 5. So the best way to explain it is compound interest. Right? In the beginning, you're making small changes. And you're like, really, this is going to lead to a life-changing thing? But there's never one life-changing thing, or it's very rare, at least with healing, the way I lived it. You start very slowly, and then it goes and goes and goes, and suddenly time flies by, and you find yourself in these incredible places. But I think of like the dogs, I wasn't able to make it my full-time job until 35. Right? And I met Rachel, I think, when I was 33. And then we moved in when I was 34 or 35. So a lot in the beginning but it's really trusting the process. But I love sharing that because people go like, oh, was it immediate? I'm like, no. And 5 years is not a long time at all. But when you're living it, it's a very long time. When you're in it, it's a very, very long time. And so that's why I love the bite-sized things in the beginning. Just block that person from the phone.
I like that. I like that as an example.
But I don't want to. Just say, I'm sorry for this one little thing. Why? Just block the thing. You're going to do this, just do it.
Yeah. It will not only will make a difference in the long term, but it teaches you to think in different ways.
Yeah.
And
correct.
At the end of the day, I think what the first ceremony does is
flip the pancake.
Yeah, it helps you start a healing journey.
Yeah.
However long then it will take.
Yeah.
And I always say that it takes a whole lifetime.
Oh, of course.
But it doesn't take a whole lifetime to be happy.
I still do them.
Right. And it doesn't take a whole lifetime to be happy with the life that you're living. And I think you're such a wonderful example of this.
Thank you.
So I have a few more questions before we end.
Yeah.
One is, why did you agree to share your story here today?
I feel like the ceremonies have given me so much. And as a non-super spiritual person, I'm truly, truly hoping that a lot of people will feel identified with where I started. And the most important thing that even I could get like one person to know is that your situation can change, even if it looks absolutely impossible. And I know that place very, very well. To know that it can change in a very pragmatic, who you're dating, where you're living, what do you do every day? Because in the end, I mean, we and you have talked about this, how really your life is what you wake up to every day. It's not like the vacation that you take, it's like, do you like what you wake up to every day? And if you can have that, that's, I think, the biggest gift, which I would never return now. Like I want it forever.
Nice. You'll have to return it at some point.
Eventually, I know.
Yeah.
I know. But if I eat really, really well, I won't have to return it for a very long time.
Beautiful. I love that that's how you think, though.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hoping that people can relate to this idea of feeling completely stuck, whether it's in their life or in an aspect of their life, and to know that there are absolutely ways in that you can change them. And hopefully some of the stuff that we shared today can ignite a different way of thinking about it.
Beautiful. My other question is, what does it mean for you to be sharing this?
Yeah, it's a huge gift. You know, I've obviously recommended people do ceremonies many times. And I feel like it's such a wonderful gift to be able to do that. And it's funny because I'm not one of those people that says like, you have to do this. I don't do that with music, and I don't do it with movies, and I don't do it with this either. But it's so nice to be able to go, hey, I found this thing that helps, and you might want to be able to, and you might want to try it. And to be in a position where you actually can say, hey, it helped me, is a wonderful place. Actually, the best way I can share this is with the desire to be a dad. Right? I went from a life that I didn't want to enjoying my life to the point where I could see someone being extremely happy that I brought them into it. To me, that is the biggest show of change.
So it almost sounds like you didn't want, partially at least, to be a father before, because you didn't want...
Not partially, it was a no. No.
Right.
Yeah, right.
At least because there was this feeling that you are going to bring into a world somebody that now is condemned to live.
Yeah, cursed.
Right.
Yeah.
Cursed to
exactly.
live. That's a strong statement.
Yeah. But it's a real one.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what it means to me?
Tell me.
That you are sharing this?
Uh-huh.
Some sort of beautiful completion of not that your healing journey is over or that anything is over,
Right.
or mine or anything, but it's like I'm putting myself in, like I'm traveling in time back to 10 years ago,
Right.
when I served you that first cup of medicine and you were struggling so much, physically, mentally, emotionally, in all of the ways. And if somebody would pick up this video and showed it to me,
impossible.
Be like, okay, right now that you're serving this cup of medicine to this man, like, let me show you what it became. And then they were to show me this video. I am now imagining me showing that video to that version of Ivan, and feeling the blooming and the transformation and the healing and how meaningful all of this ended up being, and effective and real. And so that's kind of, it's not exactly a sense of completion, but it feels really good that we started there and now we're here 10 years later sharing it in this way. So, and my last question is, would you like to be found? And if so, where can people find you?
Oh, thank you. People can find me at themaxdogtrainer.com or on Instagram at maxdogtrainer1, like the number 1.
Okay. In any case, I'll make sure to link that in the description below. So if you want to reach out to Max for anything, and obviously that includes dog training, but what?
Right.
Yeah. You will know where to find him. I want to say one more thing. This is advertisement for him. He's not paying me to do I'm not getting a commission.
Right. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it would be funny. I've heard many times something like, oh my God, Max, I tried 6 dog trainers. Right. Nobody could train little Fifi. I was giving up, and somebody told me that you could do it, and then in 4 classes you did it. How did you do that? So that's how good Max is. And as I said, it's not just from the skills in training dogs, but in the skills of becoming a better human. Yeah. And it is so beautiful to have seen you grown like this and be by your side and
do it together.
And to do it together, because you've also helped me grow as a facilitator by being one of my first guinea pigs, and also by trusting me on this process for so many years. So I want to once again say thank you for saying yes to this.
You're welcome.
And is there anything else that you want to tell the audience?
No.
Thank
you so much. Thank you so much.
My biggest pleasure. Thank you for coming. And that's the end of today's episode. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye. Did you know you could be part of this podcast? If you would like to be my guest, submit your unique medicine or healing story to hello@ivanchokran.com. Click on the left square to watch another video I made on a related topic. All my content is free. If you appreciate it and wish to assist me to continue releasing this kind of content, please consider supporting me on Patreon. You can also follow me on my socials and subscribe to this channel.